Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of you people think that all I do is drink coffee and eat biscuits and snacks. Well, you know, to be honest, I do a fair bit of that. But today I'm here at this gorgeous little seaside country town, and I want to address a topic that a lot of people ask me about, and that is, how do I improve my nightscape photography? So what I want to do today is just run you through some ideas and tips, things that I've worked on over the years, and hopefully it's going to help you as well. So let's just have a bit of a journey around and we'll go through some of those ideas. Now, I would say that a lot of people are looking to improve their photography, and by doing that they need to upgrade their equipment or the gear that they use. Now, probably my first piece of advice is to just start with what you have already, because there's probably a whole lot of gear that you're using that you don't even know the potential of what you've already got. So there's a number of things that we can look at within this realm. So I think probably the first thing, and I've mentioned this plenty of times before, is to learn the basics well. They're the things that you have to do every time you go out to shoot. I guess you'd call it the bread and butter stuff, the stuff that is just basic. And I've done this myself. I've gone out and I've thought to myself, I'm going to shoot all this stuff, glossed over the basics, come home, looked at my images and thought, oh, it was out of focus, or the composition was wrong, or something like that. Or even worse than that, I didn't bring enough gear with me, or I left batteries at home, or something. There's always something that, if you gloss over the basics of your photography, that you'll miss out and you'll regret the fact that you did that. And this is a big one. Upgrade equipment only when you need to. Now, I'm a sucker for this. If a new lens or a new camera or something comes out, I think to myself, gee, I really, really want that. And sometimes it just sucks us in, and all we're really doing is spending money, and we haven't even exhausted and learnt the gear that we've just tossed aside. And look, I'm guilty of this just like everybody else. Now, of course, one of the other things that I think is really important, and so many people gloss over this, is to practice using your gear at night time. And what I'm talking about there is out in the field in the dark. Because what happens is this: we tend to get our gear and we'll have a look at it in daytime. We go into a camera shop. Oh yeah, beauty, I can work all that stuff out. No worries at all. Or even at home when we have our own gear. And then when we get out in the dark and it's cold and frosty and the ground's uneven and things mightn't be going our way, it might be windy and might be something, I don't know. But we suddenly lose all perception of how this camera actually works, and we can't find the buttons. Maybe we're wearing gloves, we're fiddling around in the dark, things start to go wrong. And I'll tell you from my experience, when things start to go wrong, that's when we start to make bad decisions. So how do we improve our photography? Learn our gear, learn the basics, practice and use what we have to its fullest potential before upgrading to newer gear. All right, for my second point in this video, I want to talk about something I'm always on about. I bang on about it just about in every video, and that is preparation and planning. You see, for me personally, I've had more night shoots fail on me simply because I haven't done enough preparation or enough planning before I even get out there in the field. And so there's a number of pointers I'd like to bring to your attention, I suppose. Some of these I've mentioned before, some of them for some of you might be new, but I can tell you now that they are just so critical for us to succeed and get better at our nightscape photography. Now, one of the things that I would strongly recommend doing is to think through what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be shooting before you even go out. It's one of the things that a lot of people just don't do. What they'll tend to do is jump in the car and get all excited, race out in the middle of the night and hope for the best. Now, I can tell you that hoping for the best often leads to disappointment. And this definitely leads to my next point, and that is scouting locations in the daytime before you even think about going back out at night time. Now, I know, yes, I'm repeating myself. I'm like that broken record going round and round again, but I can tell you it is such an important step to improving your nightscape photography. Now, I think some of the tools that we need to embrace to help us with determining things like weather conditions and also the positioning of the stars in the sky. Now, this is nothing new, but I'll mention it anyway. Apps like Stellarium or Photo Pills are great for just helping us to understand how the stars move across the sky, where they're going to be at a particular time, at a particular part of the year, or in a particular season. And the other thing that we really need to work out is what's happening with moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset, all of those things, which are critical to us obtaining the best possible images. Now, I use Stellarium all the time at home to prepare myself, typically before I come out onto a shoot, and I'll look up the composition of the stars, the shape and the positioning of the sky, wherever it may be. The other thing is Photo Pills. Now, I don't use Photo Pills much at night time, but I use it all the time during the daylight. So like this, I'll come out here to a place like this and think, okay, now I know the Milky Way is going to be over here somewhere. I'll just get the phone out, put it up into the sky and say, yeah, there it is. And at 9:30 tonight, it's going to be there. Or at a different time of year, at 1 a.m, it's going to be there. This is how it works. And these tools are so critical to us, and we may as well make use of them. They are just valuable. Now, another one that I highly recommend is Clear Outside. This is basically a cloud predictor, and I found it to be pretty accurate. The other part of it though is it helps you with other weather conditions, and I think basic weather navigation is really important as well. So we need to know if it's going to be hot, cold, windy, you know, and cloud cover is a massive part of our nightscape shooting. I mean, just last night I was shooting out there and it was frustratingly windy and frustratingly cloudy, and I know a lot of you face those conditions all the time, but these apps help us, and at least we go into it with a bit of a plan and a bit of an understanding of what we're going to encounter when we get out there in the field. Now, you know, even something like this can be quite helpful. It gives you a bit of a lay of the land. Now, for example, I haven't been here before, so I don't really know what it's like here. And a map like this, I can work out, yep, I'm here, and you can see all these different gorges and different things there. Now, I'm going to go and have a look for sure if I want to shoot there, but at least it's a little bit better than a standard map or a Google map, because it shows you more of the lay of the land, and I think that can be important as well. Okay, so when we finally get to location, I think there's an incredibly important point to make, and that is to be organised when you're on location. Typically, it's nighttime, it's after dark, and things are always harder to attain in the dark. Everything becomes slow motion. In fact, I talk about nightscape photography all the time as being photography in slow motion. But there is a few particular tips I'd like to run you through about on location stuff. Okay, so here we are at a location. Now, the very first thing that I would have to say to everybody is to check your focus. Double check your focus, triple check your focus, because it's so easy to get carried away. You're in this epic location. You've got the Milky Way, gorgeous over the top of the gorge there. Rush out, set up our camera and get engrossed in the atmosphere of the place and forget the focus. Or if we don't forget about it, we just roughly focus and say, oh, that looks pretty good. No, double, triple check your focus every single time. And especially if you happen to move your camera to a different location, even if it's only a few meters one way or the other, check it again. Because I can tell you now, there's a lot of things you can fix in software when you get back home. Focus is not one of those things. Now, I would have to say that one of the things that people leave on the bottom of the list, and it should be way up the top of the list, is composition. Now, that's not just for nightscapes, it's for any photography. But I can tell you now, from my experience, A lot of us get carried away with, as I said, just being in the epic location and the atmosphere of the place, and we're just happy to get a shot. We don't really care what we've got in the foreground or if there's anything close or a leading line or whatever. But my strong suggestion is to make use of compositional rules. And if you have to move your tripod or particularly lower your tripod down, then do it. And I would suggest, as well as that, try different compositions, because sometimes we come to a place, for example, like this, we may have seen somebody else do a shot here and we think, well, that's the shot I want. Well, maybe you can get that shot, but you know, there's always another shot. And sometimes all you have to do is just move over this way or this way, just a little bit. And one of the other things, and I'm big on this, you already know, is, yeah, sure, the big wide landscape looks absolutely beautiful, but try and include some foreground subjects. Now, in a place like this, maybe it's a rock or a boulder, or it may just be the sand. I don't know. Whatever it is, look for something that's closer to the camera, and you may need to do focus stacking or some other technique to incorporate that into your shot. But composition, it has to be simply one of the most important factors in our nightscape photography. So I guess along the lines of what I'm talking about is I'm encouraging you to be creative. Try new things. I mean, you might just want to experiment with lighting. Try using light painting or low-level lighting if you've never done that before. Perhaps try an extra long exposure for the foreground. When there's no moonlight, you need some help. There's lots of things you can do. Maybe even trying a new focal length lens that's one that you haven't used before. There are so many options. And for some of you, I know you will have lenses that you think, oh, that's not wide enough to get the shot. So my strong suggestion is to shoot panos. Just do maybe even 2 or 3 side by side, and that will give you a bigger surface area of image. There's so many things that you can do. You just got to think outside the square. And coming into this scenario is, please do not copy what everybody else is doing. Be your own self, because that's where your creativity will shine, believe me. Now, there's one final point I would like to make about this particular segment, and that is, when you're out on location shooting, keep in mind what you want to do as far as the editing of those images is concerned. Because I've found that there's many times when people will say, oh, I'll just fix that up later on in post-production. My advice is, do not think that way. What you have to do is think the opposite way. Think to yourself, when you're out on location like this, what can I do to make it easier later on when I come to edit this image? One of the things that comes to mind is things like stacking for noise reduction. Now, when you're out in the field, if you don't take enough images, then you're not going to have enough images later on to stack. So my strong suggestion there is to, if you think you only need 5, take 10, because you just don't know. Maybe you'll think later on, I wish I had taken those 10 images. And there's quite a lot of other things. The same with panos. You might want to only do maybe 3 or 4 side by side. But my advice is to take another one on each side, because later on when you get to the editing suite, you're going to say, oh, I'm cutting off too much of the image because I have to crop it. So that's what I'm talking about. When you're out in the field, act as if you know exactly what it is you want to do in your editing suite when you get home. Wow, this is a whole lot better conditions than the last time I was here a couple of days ago. But you know, we were just speaking about editing, and that is our final tip today. I think it's critical to work on your techniques and editing workflow, because more than any other genre of photography, nightscape photography relies very heavily on post-production skills and techniques. And I think probably if you want to spend time and energy and even money sometimes, I think learning Lightroom, Photoshop or other post-production software is definitely money well spent. Now, one of the things that I used to struggle with a lot with my editing and my post-production was getting stuck in a rut. And I'm sure lots of you struggle with this as well. And what happens is we get our presets and our settings and we adjust everything exactly the same for every single image that we take. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a workflow and a standard workflow and starting somewhere. But my suggestion is to use that simply as a starting point and then experiment. Now, there's a common thread here. Talking about shooting images and talking about editing images, my advice is to experiment and try some new things out. It won't always work out for you, but you just may stumble across something that you think, wow, I never knew I could do that. And that's what it's like. Now, along the lines of that, I would strongly suggest using software to stack like Sequator for Windows or a Starry Landscape Stacker for Mac. You'll be absolutely blown away by the results that you may be able to get, especially if you're using equipment that is a little bit older and has a lot of noise levels. When you stack images, multiple layers of the same shot, one on top of the other, you will find you will get incredible noise reduction. And there's so many other things as well. So the Sequator for Windows is free, Starry Landscape Stacker is for Mac. It's not free, but it's still worth the investment as far as I'm concerned. Now, another thing I would suggest about editing, especially when you've done a lot of blending and stacking for noise reduction and all these sorts of techniques, is to sometimes you look at your image and you go a bit haywire, you go a bit cross-eyed and you can't see it properly. You've been working on it for so long that suddenly you begin to dislike the image. So my suggestion when that happens is to just put it down, go and do something else, in fact, possibly go and sleep on it, come back the next day and just have a look at your image again with a fresh set of eyes. And I can guarantee you, I've done this plenty of times, and an image that I was beginning to hate initially, I've grown to like again simply because I'm not looking at it through tired eyes anymore. I'm looking at it almost as a fresh image. And I think that can do a world of wonders to our final edited Nightscape images. And I'd probably say the reason for that is because we spend so much time on these images, sometimes a whole lot more than we really need to, that we get a bit frustrated with ourselves and we look inside and say, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, it doesn't look like someone else's image, and you get disillusioned and we decide to give up. Now that's my final point. Never ever give up, because sometimes we do have a rest, we need to have a rest and we need to take time out, but never give up. So if you're struggling with shooting your nightscapes, don't give up. If you're struggling just to get the motivation to get up out of bed and go out at nighttime, don't give up. If you're struggling with your post-production methods and your computer software and all the other things, do not give up. I can tell you now, it will turn around and you will have success, because you need to be persistent and persevere, and you'll come through at the end. Okay, well, there you have it. There's a few gems of wisdom from me. Certainly not a comprehensive list by any means, and I'm sure you'll find some other great reference material out there, both here on YouTube and other places online. But you know what? I'm rapt that you spent some time with me here today. I couldn't believe how wonderful it is out here in this sunshine today, and I'm hoping I can get some nightscapes tonight from some of these locations that I've showed you today. But anyway, look, I'd be delighted to have you subscribe to the channel if you feel led to do so. I'm always working on Nightscape image material, so resources to help people understand where they're at and how to shoot at nighttime. That's what I do and that's what I love. So if you'd like to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, fantastic. Love to have you on board. Thanks very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.